Hello and welcome back to my channel. Spring is starting to creep in, so I've been starting my routine to refresh our home for a new season. So you guys will have seen me do this before. I always strip our sofa every season and wash all of the covers. For those who don't know, this is an Ikea Kivik sofa, which is from their modular sofa range. So you can basically configure any design you like. We have a combination of the 3-seater sofa and then we've added a chaise section on the end. It's a pretty big sofa which we needed to fill this space. The beauty of many IKEA sofas is not only comfort and longevity, but also the fact that all covers can be stripped off and washed, not just the cushion pads like on an upholstered sofa, for example. So if, like us, you have pets and/or children, it's a very practical feature to have. A couple of years ago, we did invest in some sofa covers from the brand Bemz. So these covers that you can see aren't the original IKEA covers, but I'll link the ones that we have below in the description box because they're a great way to elevate and/or just refresh and update your IKEA sofa to something different. Now, this is usually the first task I undertake when going into a new season because I can't fit all the covers in the wash at the same time. It takes a couple of loads and then they need to be left to air dry, then ironed before putting back on the sofa a few days later. So moving on. During the winter season, we can get some masking on the walls and ceiling in some areas. It's these darker marks and it's caused by multiple things. The vast amount of renovation dust, heat residue from cooking, having the log burner going and central heating on, and from all of the candles and incense that I like to burn. Now, I didn't touch up any of the paint last year at all, so this year I decided to start touching up the areas where the masking is most visible. The kitchen being the worst affected area. I've recently been painting the landing and stairs, which is a project we'll be sharing in the next few weeks. So I already had all of my painting gear out and a tray of little green Joanna at the ready. This was the largest area to touch up, but over the coming weeks it's on my to-do list to move around the house and touch up any other paint where needed. It's been a while since I changed up this shelf, so I decided to give it a bit of a spring refresh. I have a cupboard upstairs that I call my merchandising cupboard, so I've got a few bits and pieces in there that I can swap out seasonally and when I want to play around with things. I kept the cookbooks in place and used this small seagrass basket as a bookend. I recently bought some artificial gypsophilia bunches with the spring-summer seasons in mind, so I'm using those in this small textured vase which we've had for a couple of years. I didn't want to completely fill the shelf as I often think that can look a bit cluttered, especially with it being such a long shelf. So I'm creating 3 focus points. These bowls and plates, which are actually part of a dinnerware set, but we will use them for nibbles, will sit in the centre, and then over on the left, I extended that section with some glassware. Down on the worktops, I like to use oak wood serving boards and natural baskets to add some warmth and natural texture to the kitchen, given that there's quite an expanse of black. Now, many of you know that I love an oversized vase. This one is one of my favourites, and I'm padding out the inside with some shredded packaging to act as a base for the branches that I'm going to pop inside. There are so many amazing and realistic looking artificial branches available these days, and I prefer to use those which can be reused year after year and don't require water changes or trimming. I'm swapping out the canvas artwork I made for an oversized minimal oak frame, again just to add a touch more warmth. Here the frame still has an autumn print inside but will be swapped out for a spring print. I have prints for every season which I keep inside the frame behind the current one on show so that it's easy to swap them out season after season. It's also the perfect storage place for them so that they remain flat and undamaged. This basket has moved around the house as I've switched things around over the last year, but this season I'll be using it as a fruit basket. I used a linen napkin to lay it inside to protect the bottom of the basket from any fruit moisture, and again it just adds another natural texture to the mix. Moving on to the lounge area now, and admittedly I don't really do much in here for spring, as we usually hang out in the open plan kitchen seating area, which is overlooking the garden. However, we do currently have a vase in the shelving area which I decided to add some flowers to. I don't often buy real flowers, but from time to time I might treat myself to a bunch, and during spring I do love a white tulip. I can usually manage to make them last about 2 weeks, which is pretty good going for tulips, which have a notoriously short vase life. But again, there are some great realistic artificial alternatives which I've linked below in the description box, along with all of my other artificial stems and branches for anyone who's interested. This antique dough bowl, which sits on the shelf above, has had these giant pine cones in there since autumn, and last spring-summer I didn't fill it with anything, so I thought I'd change it up this year. I'd had some dyed moss in my merchandising cupboard for a while, which I bought for a project that I just never got around to, so I decided to use that to fill the dough bowl. I put a piece of cardboard inside the bowl first to protect the base from the dye on the moss, and so that's worth bearing in mind if you're planning on using dyed moss in a natural vessel like this. I had a small hydrangea print which I hadn't used because I didn't have a frame small enough, so I picked up this deep oak frame from Habitat recently, and it was the perfect size. It's quite a dark and moody print, but the oak frame lightens it up and it fits in perfectly with the mix of antique and new pieces on these shelves. I haven't really changed up this console table in a while. It's quite minimal, but to be honest, we like it that way. But as the vase is currently empty, I did want to add some spring branches to fill a bit of that mid space. Again, these are artificial branches, so that makes them really easy to manipulate as they have a wire internal structure. So this just makes them easy to style in any vessel. I had some of the dyed moss left over, so again I'm using a piece of cardboard as a base to protect the bowl, but also to raise the moss level, as I didn't quite have enough to fill the bowl fully. So this is a bit of a cheat, just to give the illusion that there's more in there than there actually is. Other than a good spring clean and a few paint touch-ups over the coming weeks, that's pretty much all I'm going to do with this area. Now, as I've shared in previous seasonal styling videos, I usually change over our front door decor with each season. However, we are in the midst of a pretty big garden renovation, another project that we'll be sharing before summer starts. And this front area is being used to cart hardcore, cement and topsoil into the back garden via the side access. So there's not much point in me doing anything here until the garden is finished, and then we can give this area a good clean and get it ready for spring. But one thing we have grown quite fond of is a seasonal wreath on the front door. Our autumn and Christmas wreaths are both real, and because they dried out nicely, we can use those year after year. But we've never had a spring wreath before. I bought a few artificial wreaths to try out to see if we liked any of them, and these were the options. Moving on to upstairs, and in the first guest room we do have another framed print, an empty vase, which could inject just a little touch of spring to the room. I recently added these creamy coloured artificial hydrangea stems to my collection, so I thought I'd use these to fill this vase, as we do have guests coming in just under a couple of weeks. I love not having to remember to change the water or to deadhead any of the stems, especially in somewhere like a guest room that might be forgotten because it's not used every day. I can just pop them in there and even splash a few drops of an essential oil on the petals so that they double up as a home fragrance. As I did with the print down in the kitchen, this one is also being swapped out for a spring appropriate option, which again is kept in the same frame behind the one on show. Now, when it comes to a general spring clean, we do a deeper clean over the course of a good few weeks, maybe doing things that we wouldn't usually do as part of either our daily or weekly cleaning routines, like for example washing the sofa covers. Amongst these tasks is a real deep clean of the fridge. Now, we do keep on top of the fridge so it never looks dirty, but I do love that task of taking everything out and washing all of the internal shelves and drawers and trays, and then putting everything back in and maybe reorganising a few things. So I love fruit and Greek yogurt as a breakfast option or sometimes just a snack, and I recently bought these drainer containers because I've heard that they can help with keeping fruit and vegetables fresher for longer. The drainer allows any moisture to drain to the bottom so that the produce isn't sat in it, causing it to then soften and spoil. Now I'm just using these for the first time, so I'll keep you guys updated on if we find that they work or not. Along with the fridge deep clean, we also do the same with the cupboards. Again, we keep a pretty clean home so the cupboards never look messy or dirty, but it's always nice to get in all those nooks and crannies and to just know that you've done it. And I personally find that feeling so satisfying. We don't usually wash curtains on a weekly basis, so this will be something that's done every 3 months unless needed. And I'll go around the various rooms with the charging cables and make sure that all electric blinds are fully charged. All the blinds are on timers, which I adjust on the app as the light changes with the seasons, and they don't need charging very often. But this is just a little bit of what I like to call home admin that I like to do all in one go so that I know they're all fully charged. Well, although we haven't fully finished getting the house ready for spring, we've ticked a fair bit off the to-do list, and don't worry, I will be sharing my wardrobe switchover in a few weeks as usual. I'd love to hear what your seasonal changeover routines are, if you have any, and what you're most looking forward to this spring. Let me know in the comments section below. But for now, thank you for watching today's video. Happy spring, and I'll see you next time.